Let's take a look at some occupations that were pretty important at one time that it seemed like you couldn't live without, but have now disappeared from the scene, like the TV repairman. Before TV, there was, of course, radio and radio repairmen. And when TV replaced radio as the dominant form of entertainment in the early 1950s, many radio fixers switched over to TVs. Like early radios, TV was expensive and made up a lot of tubes, wires, and other parts that could be replaced, but fixing one was a specialized work that had to be done by a trained professional. As the average household income increased from $4,100 in 1955 to $30,000 in 1990, the price of TVs went down. Factoring in the inflation, a TV cost half as much in 1990 as it did in 1955. And by the 1990s, it no longer made sense to pay someone to fix a TV set. If a repairman charged $20 an hour plus the cost of parts, even a minor repair could cost at least $60. It made more sense to do what most people do today, throw it away and buy a new one. In 1978, there were more than 20,000 TV repair facilities in the United States, and today there are fewer than 5,000. The number will continue to dwindle as more and more Americans replace their old, difficult, and expensive-to-fix tube-based TVs with stable, tubeless, high-definition televisions. I particularly remember the TV repairman that we had come to our house in Bridgeport back in the late 50s, early 1960s. It was Gasic's Television Repair, and I believe Gasic's is still in business here in Saginaw, out in Bridgeport. But I remember the repairman would come and he'd bring a big case with all kinds of tubes and testers in it, and usually he was able to get the TV going right there at the house, and very rarely did he have to take it into the shop. And when he did take it into the shop, he would generally leave a loaner so that we wouldn't be without televisions for very long. So Gasic's was a really cool repair service. Then there were chandlers. Ancient Romans created wax candles from papyrus rolled in melted beeswax or animal fat. As the only source of artificial light for centuries, candles became a major commodity in Western Europe, where guilds of candle makers, also called chandlers, handcrafted their candles and sold them door to door. As a profession, candle making began to die out in the 1830s when inventor Joseph Morgan devised an automated candle making machine. A piston ejected candles out of a mold as they solidified, and that machine could produce 1,500 candles per hour. Then came the death knell for the light bulb was introduced in 1879, which quickly made chandlers obsolete. The milkman. I remember Gilmore's Milk would come to our house in Bridgeport there on Shreve Drive at least a couple times a week, and I remember that he would occasionally give me a really nice toy plastic milk delivery truck, and I've looked for one for years because I'm really particularly nostalgic for that, and can't find one anyplace. But according to the Department of Agriculture, more than half of the milk sold in the United States in 1950, along with eggs, ice cream, and butter, was delivered to homes by milkmen, all employed by independent local dairies. By 1963, deliveries had dropped to a third of all milk sold, and as of 2001, the last year's statistics are available, it's less than 4%. Milkmen began to disappear in the late 1960s when dairies were operated by large national franchises, and 98% of American homes had refrigerators, thus reducing the need for daily milk delivery. But the real milkman killer was probably the supermarket. Stores use milk as a loss leader. For instance, milk can cost as much as $4 per gallon, and that being wholesale, but they sell it for as little as $2, making up the difference with the profit on other items. That's an economic system which small dairies could not compete. Then there were the brickmakers. Brickmaking began in ancient Persia, and the process remained virtually the same really for centuries. Brickmakers dug for clay and left it exposed to the elements over winter, allowing the freeze-thaw cycle to tenderize the clay. In the spring, they ground the clay into a powder, placed it in a soaking pit with water to get it to the right consistency, then mixed it by hand. Next, a chunk of clay was rolled in sand, placed in a mold, and left to dry in the sun for 2 weeks, then fired in a wood or coal-burning kiln. As it did with candle making, the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century ended artisan brick making. Ever since, bricks have been made in factories with temperature control and other processes that make all bricks uniform. And cobblers. I remember oftentimes my dad taking shoes of us kids and of his to a shoe repair shop in Saginaw. And a cobbler is also known as a shoemaker. And cobblers arrived in America with the first English colonists that settled at Jamestown. The voyage was funded in part by London's Shoemakers Guild. They were fully established by 1616, and cobblers went door to door soliciting made-to-order shoes. But it wasn't until the 1750s that shoemakers abandoned to-order shoemaking and simply made whatever shoes they wanted to, in various sizes, and offered them for sale. And up until the 1840s, all shoes were made by hand with roughly the same tools that had been used for centuries: knives to cut the leather, pliers to stretch it, awls to punch holes in it, and a needle and thread to stitch into the shoe. The trade survives today, but only for repairs. Most shoemaking has been mechanized since 1846, the year Elias Howe invented the sewing machine.